at Riverside Park Speedway. And even in the pro stocks, being a pro for professional was tough. And you asked for it, a look back at the modified tour at Richmond International Raceway. Running at Riverside Park Speedway. The 1991 season for the modified pro stocks and late models is well underway. And that's what this edition of Raceweek is all about. The season begins right here in the Northeast from Riverside Park Speedway. Hello, I'm Ben Dodge, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Raceweek. Well, I'm standing right here in front of the stadium gate at Riverside Park, and the 1991 season is about to happen behind those gates. In less than an hour or so, there'll be literally thousands of race fans that come out to witness the first modified event of 1991. And that's what this edition of Raceweek is all about. Besides that, we'll also be taking a look at round number 2 on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, one of the most exciting and successful events of the season so far, as we go back and take a look at the Richmond International Raceway and the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. But right now, it's time to walk through these stadium gates down into the pit area here at Riverside and talk to the competitors and ask them what it's like. Do they get the jitters for an opening day event as 1991 is about to begin? On opening day, all of the teams arrive at the racetrack. They unload the car, go out for a quick practice, and come back into the pit area. But even a veteran like Jerry Marquis, who competes in 2 divisions, will tell you that opening day never comes easy.
You get them jitters every night when you go racing. Not just opening nights a little bit more because you don't know how the car is going to go, and you want to get everything right so you can run good. You got new sponsors helping you out, and hopefully we can do the job for them and show them what we got this year and keep going.
What are the key points?
I think everybody does. I think it's more you're pumped up and you're ready to go racing again, more than jitters. You wait all winter. You can't wait to get back racing. And then the biggest thing is you want to start off the season on the right foot. You want a good finish.
No, not anymore. Maybe on the tour you'd get a little bit of a jitter, but on a Saturday night show, it's more just for practice.
Yeah, it's been a long winter. We went off and played hockey this winter. That finished up 2 weeks ago, and now it's time to get back in the seat. The seat doesn't even feel right after being out of it for 6 months.
Say now, isn't that the Reg? Now, a guy like Reggie Ruggiero can't get opening day jitters. Now, do you, Reg?
After 20 years of racing, jitters started to go away. Tonight being I'm with a new team this year. First time I drove this number 11 owned by Bill Pelley's former track champion car last year, Bob Bodreau. The car seemed to go very well in practice. We needed a little bit of change in here and there to get it, situated for myself. I think we did that already. And just hoping for a good starting spot and hope we pick the right compound tires because it's still going to be so cold tonight. And a little bit of luck, we'll be in front at the end of the race.
I think I kind of used to, but, I just come here to go race, and this is like a fun day for me. There's really no pressure at all because it's not points. You just go out there, run hard, and just try to win. And there's really no pressure because it's just not a point deal. So if you have a bad night, you get down a couple laps, and you can end it easy and not feel too bad about it.
Oh, anytime you come to an opening night at Riverside Park, the butterflies start hitting your stomach around 10 o'clock that morning. It's tough to, opening night is opening night. I mean, that's just it. First day of racing, no matter what is done going on before, when you come to Riverside, it's like coming home. You want to do good in front of all the people you know. So opening night is definitely a big rush. It really gets you going.
Well, just as you suspected, most of the drivers even admitted that they have jitters on opening day. But those jitters are going to soon be put to the test because now it's time to put the cars in the actual competition. Well, it's not feature event time, but it's qualifying time, and that's the first time for many of these competitors to run against each other. Let's see how those jitters and opening day stories are put to the test for qualifying action. Qualifying heat number 1 would match up Bruce D'Alessandro and Richie Gallup. George Urdinas and Larry Moore, who returned to the park, would be making up the second row. When the field went to green, D'Alessandro looked like the man in charge. Gallup was right there on his back bumper, and Larry Moore would run to the outside with car number 63. But the challenge was already starting to develop up front when Charlie Pastriak would thread the needle and try to put the pressure on Moore. While that was happening at the checker, it was D'Alessandro over Richie Gallup. The second qualifying round saw Eric LeClaire to the inside of Stan Greger. Brian Schofield would also try to thread the needle to the front, but it was Stan the Man Greger who moved to the front of the field, with Dan Avery moving quickly into position number 2. This dropped LeClaire back to third, and Brian Schofield was now battling with Eddie Spires for the 4th and 5th spot. 6th spot was a battle with Kirby Monteith and Wade Cole, but it was Stan Greger who'd lead him back to the checker to win the second qualifying event over Dan Avery. Rounding out the top 3 was Brian Schofield. In the third qualifying round, it was Brad Hytella after a wild crash in warm-up to set the pace up front. Right on his back bumper, it was car number 0 for Ed Kennedy, and the Reg had already worked his way into position number 3. Once dialed in, the Reg would muscle up enough steam on the inside with a Bill Belly car to take over position number 2. Further back in the pack, Mighty Mike Stefanik and Marty Radwick would dice it up when a lapped automobile would create havoc. Suddenly, it was Stefanik who slammed the wall hard with John Zavisa with no place to go with car number 01. But Mighty Mike Stefanik's hopes had suddenly ended in Joe Brady's number 00. This would bring out a red checker situation, with Hytella taking down the win over Reggie Ruggiero. Modified consolation event saw last year's runner-up, Jerry Marquis, to set the pace. Right there in second was Wade Cole, and Ricky Fuller, who had to do it through the consi, was trying to thread the needle through traffic down underneath Jeff Johnson. The battle was on for the top 4 positions, but it was Wade Cole, the man that was running second, while Marquis was dominating the racing action right down to the checkers. The qualifying events are now history, and now it's time to take our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at something else that has made the competitors a little bit jittery and a little bit nervous. It's the first test of the new Nerf bars, short track style, from Riverside Park. For Raceweek. Remember, nobody covers the excitement of auto racing in the Northeast like us here on Raceweek. Tune in and check out the new airtime. Well, now it's time to go back to the pit area and take a look at some of those more unique stories that occur on opening day. It was the first opportunity to test out the brand new Nerf bars that NASCAR had introduced for 1991. Well, really not the first time, because they'd already been tried on the modified tour at the Martinsville Speedway and Richmond. But it was the first time to try them out on a quarter-mile racetrack. The big, bold, and new Nerf bars were soon to be put to the test, as we talked with the drivers about the new Nerf bars and what they'd be like at a quarter mile like Riverside.
I think these Nerf bars are going to make it for a better race. You're going to these guys that never used to be able to run wheel to wheel without playing leapfrog are going to be able to do it now. So there's going to be less accidents and more competition.
It might cause the cars not to have so much of a wheel hop when they start rubbing Nerf bars. I think with the double Nerf bar, it's going to have to hit a lot harder in order to make the car jump up in the air or climb another car. Right now, nobody really knows what the effect's going to be. Everybody's going to be testing tonight, along with the new cars and the new chassis and the new type of temperatures we're going to have tonight.
Riverside here is one of them short, fast, because of the bank, real fast racetrack. Everybody uses the Riverside slide, which is called to an advantage if you're on the inside. Bumping and banging is part of racing here at Riverside Park. I don't think the guys will overuse the Nerf bars, but it'll probably save race cars, because being that when someone does slide into you, they're not going to slide into the tires anymore. They'll slide into the bars, and it'll just be a bumping and banging. So I think, all in all, they might be an improvement over on a short racetrack, being that it won't knock anybody out. It'll just sort of rub together.
This is going to be the place that'll be a true test for them. The other two tracks, Martinsville's a tight track. It's a big track, and there's contact there, but not like Riverside Park. Riverside's always a lot of contact. So I think tonight is going to be a real test.
Talk is cheap, and action speaks louder than words. And in just a few short moments, we're going to be seeing the action, as those Nerf bars are going to be put to the test in a 100-lap event for the modifieds here at Riverside Park Speedway. It was a full moon night for night number 2. Remember, this event was rained out 1 week ago. And actually, in the morning, it snowed at Riverside. But when it came feature event time, it was bitterly cold, but not on the racetrack, where the competitors were ready to go 100 circuits around for the Eagle Snacks 100. It was Ed Kennedy and Ralph Solom's race car in the front row, and Larry Moore in the West Hartford Tool and Die number 63 outside of row number 1. As the field went to green, it was Kennedy who wasted no time at all to set the pace. Larry Moore was now challenged heavily by Dan Avery, and Stan the Man Greger was on a roll, and so wasn't Richie Gallup with car number 0. But the real battle was shaping up for second. Avery had moved to the inside of Moore, while Charlie Pastriak, along with the number 9 of Bruce D'Alessandro, were trying to get into the hunt. It was still Kennedy in command when Schofield would go spinning in the Cliffs Auto Body, number 09. But back towards the front of the field, second leader of the event was car number 10 for Dan Avery. Ed Kennedy had to settle for second now, and Stan Greger was moving into the inside to pick up the spot. It was Richie Gallup who was challenging for the 4th spot. Larry Moore was 5th, and Charlie Pastriak was on a roll heading to the front of the field. Bruce D'Alessandro would run strong, when Kirby Monteith would have a problem and drift up a bit to make contact with Brad Hytella. Chris Kopech would have a problem too with car number M6 as George Udinas would sneak by. But back up front, leader number 3 became car number 28 for Stan Greger. Greger, once in command, would start to string it out at the front of this field and literally pull away from the competition. But while all that was happening, from a 9th place starting spot, it was the Reg who was picking them off one at a time, running the bottom side of the racetrack like he was glued to the yellow line. The Reg was coming to the front of the pack with ease. And even though that Marty Radwig and Ricky Fuller were dicing it up, they too were off the pace a bit compared to the performance of Reggie Ruggiero. But still, now it was Ricky Fuller among the top 5. Marty Radwig was sitting in the 6th spot, and Larry Moore had dropped back to 7th. But now the challenge was on for position number 1. Greger was on the outside. The Reg made it look so easy with a bold, aggressive move to the bottom. Drag race down the back straightaway. Who would have it? Car number 11 for Reggie Ruggiero to set the pace back to the line. And once Ruggiero was in command, he would literally start to string it out. Greger would have to settle for second, but Charlie Pastriak became the surprise in this event. He had thread the needle through the traffic and was coming to the front of the field with ease. And for Jerry Marquis, consolation event winner, he was doing the same. It wouldn't take long for Charlie Pastriak to move into position number 2. Now looking for the Reg, who was already lapping cars among the top 5 positions. It was Reggie Ruggiero in command, and way back, just into the turn, it was Charlie Pastriak who was running in second. The battle was still on for the remainder of the top 5 cars. But it was Reggie Ruggiero who made it look so easy that he would dominate the racing action right down to the checker to win this event that went green from checker, a history-breaking event on opening day. Following Ruggiero was Charlie Pastriak. Third went to Jerry Marquis over Stan Greger and Ricky Fuller.
The car just ran great tonight. It would run on the bottom and on the top. We got here today and we didn't know which tires to run, and I told Bill it's going to be real cold tonight, which it is, probably about 35, 40 degrees, and we didn't know if we could run the bottom because we chose to run a little bit harder tire than everybody else, figuring that we were going to go to distance and not stop with, 30 or 40 to go. Once I got going, the car just ran super on the bottom and the top. I was still passing on the bottom on lap 90, so the car really was hooked up tonight. Nothing I could say. It was real easy to drive because the car ran so well. It was just one of the nights where we hit everything perfect, the right combination, tires, stagger, springs, and weight and everything, and we just come out of victory.
And about halfway through the race, I saw Reggie right behind me, and I kind of pulled down and let him go. Maybe he could make some of the holes for me. And right after I did it, I said, geez, I think that's a big mistake. And it turned out it was tonight. He got through the holes quicker than I did and got to the front soon. If we'd have had a restart, I think I might have been able to race him pretty good, because our lap tires were very close at the end.
But now it was time for 30 laps of competition in the pro side. Right from the start, Mike Duquette would look strong as Jerry Marquis was starting to hunt him down. But it wouldn't take long for things to get mixed up and diced up. Caruso was coming to the front of the field when trouble would develop as he would make contact with Teddy Hebert. Dave Caruso, car number 42, would quickly head to the pits, and so wouldn't Teddy Hebert. Back to the front of the field, it was Jerry Marquis who tried to work the bottom lane of the Miller machine and take over position number 1. The Chrysler of Mike Duquette was running the outside when suddenly Mark Farino would go spinning with car number 52. A mad scramble here. John Lobo Jr. becomes sandwiched in the middle, so was Rick Turcott and Wayne Gagner. When they were back to green, it was Mike Duquette who snuck back in the second, with once again the number 2 up in front. Suddenly a spin. It was Rick Dulac spinning with car number 44. On the restart, Marquis would stand on the throttle, and Eddie Carroll, with some help from Tony Papali, would make contact. This would upset the Marquis car and put Tony Papali into position number 1. Then off the turn, Rick Turcotte and Blaine Bells literally drove into Jerry Marquis as car number 2 was definitely heading back to the pit. When the green flag came back out, it was another new battle for the lead. This time, Eddie Carroll would dominate the racing action on the outside to set the pace. Tony Papali would have to settle for second, and third was now Mark Farino, who'd come from the back of the pack. Mike Duquette was still running strong, and Blaine Bells wasn't far behind when Lou Fryer would go spinning with some help with car number 74. It was still Eddie Carroll in command as time was starting to run out, and Eddie Carroll would take down the impressive victory. Finishing in the runner-up spot was Tony Papali over Mark Farino, Mike Duquette, and Tommy Fern. The late model feature event was 25 laps. There were a brand new set of rules into effect, and these cars were now more like pro stocks than late models. As the field would go to green, it would be car number 18 for Gary Fermani to set the pace. Rocco Mazziato would try to run the outside, and Fred LaForge would make it 3 wide if he would challenge Mike Quintiliano. Almost 4 wide as they head into turn number 3. But back to the line, it was Rocco Mazziato setting the pace, but not for long, when suddenly it was Fred LaForge to take over the number 1 spot. While all this was happening, Barry Gray was coming to the front of the field, and he would take over position number 1. Roger Charette, with that new Lumina, was now setting in the 3rd spot as Fred LaForge was trying to take back position number 1. But it was Barry Gray who set in the winner's circle for the first event. Roger Charette was second over Fred LaForge, Tim Smith, and Kevin Zarnecki. Well, the late models under the new rules changes seem to get dialed in and be pretty impressive for their opening day event. But for the pro stocks, well, that's a whole different story. 12 caution marred the 30-lap event there. And for the modifieds, well, it went green to checker. Fact is, they never even had a chance to use those Nerf bars. There was no requirements for them in this feature event. Well, next we're going to be taking a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be showing you the race from Richmond International Raceway for the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. All of that and more right after this. Stop number 3 on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. We'll see if Tony Hirschman will be able to get the job done, or will there be a new winner in icebreaker competition. And we'll also bring you the first event of the Coors Act Tour at Lee, USA. The big question is, will Robbie Crouch be the man who defends the title, or will Russ Erlin be the man to contend with in 1991? In addition to the racing action you've just seen, we'll be right back here at Riverside Park Speedway for round number 2. Saturday competition for the NASCAR Modified Tour, the Pro Stocks, and of course the late models. Well, now it's time to go back and take a look at Richmond International Raceway's presentation of round number 2 in the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. Now, a lot of you told us that you missed it last week, so we want to bring it to you once again. This great round of competition super speedway style for the Modified Tour from Richmond International Raceway. On Saturday, heavy rains forced the postponement of qualifying for the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour at Richmond International Raceway. But by the time that Sunday rolled out, it was up to the NASCAR officials to come up with a plan. That plan was to start them by the way they finished in points from 1990. Mighty Mike Stefanik on the outside of Jamie the Jet Tomeno. 1-2 in the points from 1990, ready to go to green. $100,000, the main attraction as the field went to green. And before the cars had visited turn 1, they were 3 wide. It was Ricky Fuller who tried a bold, aggressive move to the bottom. Mike Stefanik was in command, but the story was now a battle among the top 5 positions. It was the brand new Stealth that looked strong for a while. Then the Jet moved to the inside, and Stefanik muscled up enough steam and took over position number 1. Stefanik was on the outside, but the Gabarino number 4 was moving in to contend for position number 2. Not far behind was Ricky Fuller when Stefanik got out of the draft just a bit and dropped back to position number 3. Not far behind, it was Hirschman who was on a roll with car number 1. 5, 6, make that 10 cars, literally dicing it up for 1 position. The big dollar one at the front of the field, currently held down by the Jet. It was then Donald Satchworley who looked like he would be the man to contend with on the bottom. When Mike Stefanik came back strong and Ricky Fuller became a factor as the defending race winner. It was still the Jet in command, but Stefanik was working him over as he now would dive to the inside to try to pick up position number 1. Lap automobile, the parked car was to the bottom side of the racetrack, but it was still Stefanik now who had finally taken back the number 1 spot. Commander was settling for second now, and it was the Satch Worley machine setting in position number 3. Not far behind, competitors like Tom Baldwin were also trying to get dialed in when contact was made. Ricky Fuller had won around with some help from Baldwin as Fuller sat stranded on the inside of the racetrack. Caution flag would come out on the field, but when they were back to green, it was Jeff Fuller who moved to the front of the class impressively with car number 8. Jeff Fuller was looking as strong as he did a week ago at the Martinsville Speedway. But then Lady Luck would not shine on the Fuller team as he would drop out with an ignition problem with car number 8. It was Tom Baldwin and Tony Hirschman who next rose to the front of the class. They would duke it out lap after lap as Baldwin had now snuck into position number 2. And the black number 7 was now on a roll. Once in command of the number 2 spot, he was trying to reel in Mike Stefanik, who had built up an impressive lead. Another yellow would come out on the racetrack, and back down on pit road, it was Mighty Mike Stefanik and a host of other competitors into the pit. The story was now a quick pit stop that put car number 15 once again back at the front of the field for Mighty Mike Stefanik. Stefanik was now the leader, back in command when Tom Baldwin would try it on the inside. Not far behind was George the Duke of Kent with car number 21. It was Tom Baldwin who took the lead for a while, and George Kent saw Baldwin do it with a black car and was trying to follow him through. Then out of nowhere came Doug Heveron. Heveron would fold one of the bold, aggressive moves to make it almost 3 wide as he found magic sticking to the bottom side of the racetrack. But it was still Mighty Mike Stefanik who had the power and had the handle to set the pace in position number 1. George Kent was right there as a factor, and Baldwin was working on position number 2, but couldn't quite conquer it. He had to settle for 3rd. Then it was Baldwin to go to the pits under caution. The front spoiler on the car had been dragging. It had cost him some serious time on the racetrack, but there was still plenty of time to get the job done. Once the field went back up to green, Mighty Mike Stefanik was still the leading factor of the event. And not far behind was George Kent, who dove in deep to the bottom and took over position number 1. The Art Berry Spear Point number 21 was now the brand new leader in the competition. Mike Stefanik found himself setting in second after being the number 1 man for so many circuits. And Doug Heveron and Tommy Bowles were not far out of sight as they were contending among the top 5 cars. Back down on pit road, Jamie DeMena was in the pit, and the crew of Stefanik were talking strategy while car number 15 was back in command. But time was starting to run out. The battle was now a battle for second. Stefanik would have the victory, but Heveron would sneak in and take over position number 2. Kent would finish in 3rd over Tom Bowles and Reggie Ruggiero.
Well, I think it was going with the 4 new tires on the car. That seemed to do it for us. The car was fast right from the get-go, and everybody had their work cut out to catch up. And everyone looked at us a little weary when they saw us roll out with stickers, but it was a gamble, and it just paid off.
Well, it seemed to me that my car worked better when I was out of line from everybody else. They were working up top, and I was working on the bottom all day long, and for some reason, nobody could run on the bottom. So once they got to the bottom, they'd slow down, and then and then once I could get underneath them, then I could just drive into turn 1 just really, really hard, harder than anybody, and my car would stay on the bottom, and that's how I just managed to get George on that last lap.
Mike was moving around trying to keep me from making any moves, and in that process and stuff, let Dougie get a shot underneath me, so.
With 2 events in the record books, it's Doug Heveron leading with 316 points over Tom Baldwin, Reggie Ruggiero, Carl Pastriak, and Mike Stefanik. 6 is George Kent, 7th Ricky Fuller, Tom Bowles, Jeff Fuller, and George Brunhutzel. Next, the Modified Tour moves to the Thompson Speedway for the Icebreaker. Creativity in the Modifieds is back, and Bob Garbarino's brand new Dodge Stealth would prove just that. A different sort of a Modified. Now there were several different types of Modified on the circuit.
One of the new designs that has caught the eye of almost every car owner and fan here at the Richmond International Raceway is the new Bob Garbarino Satch Worley Mystic Missile. Bob Garbarino's been around the modified division a long time. Satch is a long-time driver on the tour. But Bob, this car, this new Dodge Stealth, certainly has caught the eye of everybody.
Well, we try to do something a little different. We don't want to look like everybody, and it's hard not to the way we're going. So we decided to take a departure, and maybe that'll spruce things up and spur some other guys to do some different things.
Now, Satch, you've driven the modifieds a long, long time. Basically, everything has been a Cavalier. How does this car feel out on the track?
Well, the car is really stable. You know, we got right much practice time on it. We fooled around with it a lot, you know, and it responds pretty much the same way the others do, but it's really stable, you know, and it's, you know, these modifieds are unknown with the wind tunnel work, you know, and you know, we were just kind of thinking maybe that this tight body, you know, would do the factory would do some of the work for us, you know, and I think it'll pay off after we have time to get a couple races on it and see what it'll do and what it won't do. It should come around.
Well, Bob, you've always been an innovator in the sport. Like you said, the modified division back 15, 20 years ago had many different styles, so it certainly is good to see another new one come along.
Oh, yeah. You know, when we started, you had coupes, you had coaches, and then we got into the Pintos, and then we had all three for a while, and it was different. You could tell everybody's race car was different, and I think that's going to start again. You know, we're hearing it through the pits this weekend. I think it'll be good for the sport. I think it's just everybody needs a little shot in the arm, and I think if we do something new, it gives you that shot.
And the Mystic Missile is that shot. The Dodge Stealth is just the shape of things to come. It's good to see new changes on the NASCAR Modified Tour, and no question about it, those changes will show up at short tracks like here at Riverside Park Speedway. Well, that's going to kind of wrap things up for this edition of Race Week. On the next edition of Race Week, we'll be right here back at Riverside Park for round number 2. We'll also bring you the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour presentation from the Thompson International Speedway for Icebreaker 1991. Besides that, we'll be taking a look at the Coors Act Tour and a whole lot more on the next edition of Race Week. Until then, we say take care, and we'll see you again next time for the best in motorsports coverage, only right here with us on Race Week. Bye-bye now.